Rehearsal playing sounds really boring. That's because it is. But if you plan your day, you'll be going the right way, and you start to make the dream a reality. And if you want one of these shirts, then go to our Facebook page.
So, first of all, an important thing when you're trying to make the dream a reality is to decide what your dream is. And every quartet or group will probably have different dreams. You might have different dreams from everyone in your quartet. So, yeah, I think a good starting point is having a bit of a discussion about what your aims are as a group, which is an interesting one for me to bring up, because I think when I joined Fortuity, the rest of the quartet already had discussed this, and I basically was like, yes, I agree. So yeah, I'd be super interested to hear you guys talk about what that whole process was like for you, like deciding, what your kind of long-term goals are, or yeah, that kind of whole process.
I don't think that our long-term goal, what it is now, was what it was when we first put the quartet together. Like, we never had that vision.
Yeah.
When we first put the quartet together, we were just like, let's go into contest and hopefully do well.
I think for me, I seem to remember in my own head, because, well, you and Ivy had sung in Breakthrough, and when I left Breakthrough, I hadn't won a medal. So in my head, I was like, I'd really love to be winning a medal on regional stage. That I would really love to have my name called and win a medal. So I think that was in my head a goal, but it wasn't ever a goal that we had discussed as a quartet. And I don't know when that actually started, whether we did actually start discussing that as a particular goal. How about you, Jem? Do you remember?
Well, I think when we first formed, so in our original lineup, it was myself, Sarah Verrian and Sian Netherton. And when we first formed, it was more, we just really wanted to sing together. And we sang, and the aim was to get through that year, because at the end of that year, Verrian was going to sing with a different quartet who she was she was promised to sing with them, and it was a great opportunity, and we wanted to support her with that. So our original aim was just to sing together as the four that we were, because we happened to like each other. And so we sang together and wanted to do as much as we could in that year. So our end goal was the end of that contest cycle. So we did Sweet Ads and we did Labs. And then I think because we did much better than we expected to do in that first year, and we saw that there was a future to the quartet that we hadn't thought was possible, and Verrian said that she wanted to continue that journey with us, we then started to think about what that might look like, but we were still quite casual with it.
Yeah.
And then when Sian stepped down and Ellie joined as our new bass, Ellie had done the international scene before, and I think she introduced to us the idea that we needed to have an end goal in sight, whereas previously our goal had always been what we were going to do that year. Were we going to get a new ballad? Were we going to get a new tune? Were we going to increase our score? Were we going to potentially get a better medal? And
which is definitely, like, that's,
absolutely
great goal to have. Like,
absolutely,
those things are still, obviously good to discuss and, kind of be on the same page with, which it sounds like you were doing at the time anyway. But it's really cool that Ellie then introduced this idea about we think about this in a more long-term way.
Yeah,
I think it was quite organic
for any quartet as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It was definitely there was not even before Ellie joined, even though, because I think we get a 5th place medal, then a third place medal. I don't know that we didn't actually have a conversation still about what we were going for. We
No.
And I think looking back, maybe if we'd had that discussion, we might have come together better in terms of our whole approach to things, and been able to handle what did happen, what didn't happen, all of those things, which now we're having done this for a few years, you kind of get used to when it doesn't go as you would like, and when it does.
I can say from my previous experiences as well, so my other quartet Decibels have been together for like 10 years, and we've also had a journey of like how we communicate as a quartet and how we plan things, because we've had our own like kind of different things to contend with, just like Fortuity has, and like different points in people's lives. And when things like that come up and you're all kind of keen to stay together as a quartet, it just really helps to be able to talk openly about what you want to achieve, what's realistic, how much time you have, like all of these kind of things. And I think it definitely does become easier to do, and it feels more natural to do when you've been together for a longer amount of time, or you're kind of gelling in that way. But it's totally something that you can do even if you're just starting together as a quartet. And it may not seem obvious, but it is really helpful, and it helps manage, like Sarah was saying, helps manage your own expectations, so that if you have a contest experience or any other experience that like doesn't, and that each of you feel about a slightly different way, it will, having a conversation about it beforehand, about what you want to get out of it and how you're going to go about doing that, it just really helps to kind of bring you closer together and support each other through that experience, which can be really great, or sometimes can just not go as you want it to. So yeah.
I think it's also probably a good thing to mention that the way that this process works, you have an end goal, and your end goal doesn't change, but your process goal is always changing. I don't know, your process goal could be score 600 at the next contest, or I don't know, feel completely confident on the stage, or something like that. Like, it'll be different for everybody.
Or it could even be to improve a specific aspect of your performance, or it could even just be your goal as a group for the year could be to focus on improving your your individual vocal quality. It could be literally something super specific on a judge's score sheet that you want to focus on improving. Or completely unrelated to contests, like doing more sing outs, or having more socials.
I genuinely think one of our process goals, or maybe the process goal for 2013, was to put our regional performance on the international stage, and not melt into a withering mess.
Yeah, because we weren't thinking about placing, were we? We were just thinking about doing a good.
But our end goal was, and always will be until we do it, is to win international and have that crown. And I think one of the things we really struggled with. One of the things we really struggled with as a British quartet when we were introduced to this idea, which was through Ellie, but also Bricelene Bonadal, apologies for pronunciation, who's the director of the Horonige show chorus. Apologies. She asked us to give our process goal for the year, what maybe our process goal would be in a couple of years' time, and what our end goal was. And I think all four of us really struggled to say that our end goal was to win international, because we were British and we can't say that we want to win something and that we might feel that one day we're worthy of that. And so I think don't be afraid of having an end goal that is taking over the world. Like, it's such a big goal, because you should always be aiming for something super high, and who knows, maybe you may never achieve it, but you should always aim for it.
We were kind of in shock as well,
Yes.
because we had just had that massive score that none of us were expecting. And then, of course, when you're watching all of the other regional contests happening and you're seeing the scores come in, and we were like seeded first or whatever going in, it was a bit of pressure, and trying to think how we could manage that pressure. So whatever situation you're in, you have to use the process to give you a way to not be scared by the pressure that might come with what you're doing. So that was one of the big things for me. And like you were saying, Jem, not being able to say we want to win, that's not, we can say that now, even though it's something in the future, or we hope is in our future, whereas before we literally couldn't say it. It was just not possible to even say it, possibly not even think it. We would push it out of our heads. We wouldn't even allow ourselves to think it. And it is following that process, though, that helps you realize that you have to start changing your mindset. You won't reach a goal unless you can dream the goal.
And no goal is too big either, because whatever your goal is, you're always going to have to break it down and break it down and break it down into like the smaller steps and milestones along the way. And that is on so many different levels. So like both in terms of like, okay, so where are we now and where is the goal, and like how far, what are the milestones in between now and where we want to be, and then how do we achieve those interim milestones. And it might be that even what you think is your first interim milestone is something that will take a lot of work to achieve. But obviously with this whole thing, the journey is like what makes it so enjoyable. Don't form barrier. But
I think that's also the importance of, and I'm so sorry, Sophie, if you just said this, but I think that's also the importance of having the process goals and the end goals, because one of our process goals was to get into the top 10, but it wasn't, we have to get into the top 10 this year, or we have to get into the top 10 by such and such year, otherwise we can't move on to the next process goal, or we're never going to win. I think it's the importance to have achievable or reachable goals that can take a minute or can take a year or however many years to get there, so that when you do achieve it, you can really celebrate that.
It's also super important to be flexible and to keep being open with each other about what's going on, because life will throw you curveballs that you don't expect, and things don't always go as planned. Yeah, it's about...
No, they don't. Do they?
Do
they, Dorian?
So yeah, it's just, I think the most important thing, although I could blather on about planning like until midnight, but ultimately I think more important than planning is just having open communication with each other. Let each other know what's going on with you, and just be accepting of everything that's going on in everyone else's lives, and lives. Don't hold yourselves to things which start to compromise what's more important ultimately.
And you can put yourself under a lot of pressure, because if you've made this goal and that's where you're headed, and then for whatever reason, if either you or one of your quartet mates is struggling, but they're not telling you, then it makes it hard then, because you never quite know what you're aiming for and how you're going to get there, whether or not things have changed. But the fact that we can then communicate and have those discussions, it kind of takes the pressure off, because you then realize, okay, so maybe we will postpone this, or instead of having that many sing outs, we'll half it, or whatever it is that's causing the pressure, or the situation to have changed. You can then all get back on the same page to move forward again.
I think also quite a few curveballs. Sorry about that.
I think also one of the most important things to remember is to be patient, And now I particularly struggle with this.
What?
I know, surprising. I know you're all shocked. I think when we first placed in the 15 and then the next year we fell out of the 15, I mean, I probably should speak for myself at this point because I turned into a petulant child. But I think just because it's not happening how you expect it to happen, or it's not happening immediately, doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. And actually, the fact that we've had all these years bouncing around 15, we've had some amazing times, and it's been part of the journey. And you know, I don't know if I would change it now, but originally I wanted it all to happen immediately. But I'm quite enjoying where we're going and how long it's actually taken us, even though at the time it felt like the worst thing ever.
You hid it so well, Varian.
Many thanks.
Yeah, like also, as with all advice, this is just, you know, it's part, this is what went well for us, and part, this is what we've learned painstakingly over time, and we would like other people to learn it faster.
Yes.
But I think that's all advice, basically.
Yeah.
Also, in terms of being able to have goals and hold yourself accountable to them, we have, I mean, we bang on about Nicky Salt, HRH, Queen of France. Sorry, Her Ladyship, HRH, Queen of France. A lot, but genuinely, I think we basically now outsource our planning to her. Things so much easier because she just kind of, without even us needing to worry about it, she kind of goes, okay, so this is the goal for this year. You know, do you guys agree? Mm-hmm. And how are we going to get there? And she kind of knows, you know, and so whether it's Nicky or someone else, I definitely recommend having kind of a fifth person, whether it's a coach or a friend or, you know, a family member, someone who really has your back and knows you all really well, to kind of be an outside ear, not just on music and, you know, the actual songs, but on, you know, where you think you want to get to. And it kind of gives you something to discuss and kind of feed off of, and someone other than the members of the quartet to kind of push you and kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for?
Motivate.
Yeah, motivate. I'm actually thinking, you know, that scene in Run, Fat Boy, Run, where there's that guy with the spatula who sort of... Fat
Boy and Nicky's got a spatula.
It's another way of taking the pressure off us, because it's hard in this like four-way marriage. There has to be a lot of give and take, and sometimes like you say, that having that external influence, that means you don't have to be the one to say, actually I can't do this, or actually we need to do this, whichever way round it is. It's nice to just have that pressure taken off, and to have someone who knows what we should be doing, because we don't always know ourselves.
No. Yeah.
Gemini generally don't know what day it is. So, no. You know, if we didn't have you two and Nicky, we'd be lost.
I recommend for anyone who doesn't have a planner in your quartet, just contact a baritone that you know and ask them. Sarah would probably happily do it.
Yeah, I'm available. We started back in the day when we were in quartet with Sian as our bass. I don't think we ever really planned a rehearsal more than, oh, we'll rock up and what should we sing tonight? Should we sing this one? Should we sing that one? And it was kind of that sort of basic. We didn't really focus too much on our warm-ups. It was just quite organic. We would arrive and do it and go for as long as we could. And then as things have progressed, we reached a point, and I'm the guilty one here, of having a rehearsal plan that was so structured that, you know, if Gemma wanted a loo break, she had to schedule it in. It wasn't quite that bad, but you know, you get
You had 2.4 seconds to go.
yeah. You've
you
gone
are.
over time on your loo break. No, but we did have a real structure, you know. I mean, I went to one of the Buzz workshops basically, and they told me how to plan a rehearsal for quartet, and I persecuted these guys with rehearsal planning, and goals for the day, for the weekend, for
the
each
hour.
song,
Yeah.
for each song, for how many duets we needed to do, all sorts. But that really wasn't sustainable.
It might
just
work
got-
for some quartets, but it doesn't
Yeah.
work for this one.
Yeah.
It might do, and the point being is that we kind of had to find our own way. We had to be a bit more flexible, so I had to let go of some of that over-structured approach to what we ended up with, which is much more fluid. So we will plan what we're going to do or what we want to achieve in a rehearsal, but we don't, you know, it's more like, well, we want to be able to sing this song, and we want to be able to I don't know, put the emotion on this one, or we want to have 2 takes that we can go away and listen to practice from, those sorts of things, rather than, yes, we're going to do half an hour of duets and then an hour of droning or whatever it was. But all of those things still happen, but we don't plan it in necessarily. We it's more like having the less of the process and more of the end goal in our rehearsal planning, I think.
Yeah. And we've also added in more repertoire breaks. So more wee breaks. We've also added in more repertoire breaks.
Yes.
So one thing that we were finding is constantly being in that contest cycle is that we would plan to spend sometimes a whole day on one song, doing various different things that needed to be done for that song, but like 2 hours into it, we had just lost all concentration and we'd lost the message of the song, and so it just wasn't an efficient use of our time. And so we planned in to sing random repertoire songs that also needed work, but not necessarily for the contest cycle. So yeah, it was important that we added that in for ourselves, our own sanity as well as our repertoire, because it gave us show time.
It has made everything more effective, because I'm the guilty one in the sense that I can just sing a song for days. It doesn't bother me. I can just keep going around on a hamster wheel singing the same song forever, and that's effective for me. But that's not effective for
given
everybody.
the part you sing, is phenomenal.
Well done, you.
So having that flexibility means that we all get to, you know, park our brain and use it for something else. So we're still singing, but like you say, Jem, we're doing it on repertoire or whatever else, different to anything, as long as it's not flogging, as it were, the same song over and over again, which for some people like me would possibly be fine, but maybe only if you have a quartet full of baritones, and that tends not.
Well, even just a quartet full of Sarahs, to be honest. Which, you know, would be pretty
I'm sure I'm not alone in this.
that.
I bet there are loads of
No, you
people out there that are saying,
are.
yeah, I would do that.
Which is totally fine. And, you know, if you want to plan your rehearsal like completely, then that's great. And it's a case of using all the tools that you have been given by coaches and finding the ones which are most effective for you and then working them into your rehearsals. Rather than, because I think with anything, just because you plan stuff a lot and plan to work really hard, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be achieving the best result. So even if you do have unlimited concentration, it's still, you can still look at your rehearsal plan and say, okay, could we be working smarter? Are we varying up the tools that we're using? Are we, you know, is this working for everyone, kind of thing? Because it's also, you know, you may have a mix of personalities in your quartet, like it's very likely. And it may be that some people are just super laid back and are happy to go along with whatever, but it may be that a certain structure or certain tools aren't working for them. So if you are a laid back person, do, you know, still take time to think, okay, is the way we run our rehearsals really working for me? Should we discuss things that can make it more effective.
I think I learned a very important lesson, and that is that actually, even though I am the type of person that could go for days on a song, that actually I enjoy the variety that we now have. And I'm lucky that I've got you guys that, you know, you've got your own ideas about what we should and shouldn't do and how a rehearsal should work. And the fact that we've arrived at this point now, I get a lot more out of the rehearsals, more than I thought I could, because of the way we now do them, with, you know, with the breaks, the fact that we have a, you know, chance to let our brain settle on things, and then do different songs and things like that. So my top tip for other people in quartet: don't just assume that if the way you think that things should be done, if it's not always being done like that, doesn't necessarily mean that you won't come to love the way that it evolves into, because I certainly have. So, and it takes the pressure off. Takes the pressure off me from planning things, as well as the girls from trying to live up to my expectations of the plan, which is a massive thing.
Preach.